Tracy Swedlow, and this is Televisionation, and I have the great Jodie McAfee from Inscape. Welcome to the show, Jodie.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
We could just keep going on if you want the show to be like this. That's fine by me. We don't have to talk shop at all.
I'm happy to talk shop. I figured you were going to ask us sort of generally how Inscape business is and how we're managing through all of this. I think that, when this all started, I think we're in a unique place, as opposed to a lot of other businesses, largely because outside of maintaining and managing and nurturing our partner relationships and our preference to do those types of things in a face-to-face manner, that, there's nothing about our data licensing regime and the delivery of data that actually requires human contact. And so, in terms of just day-to-day operations, and outside of the fact that no one's in the office and we're all working from home, it's kind of business as usual. We are definitely, keeping in close contact with all of our partners, because obviously a number of those partners utilize data for the purposes of powering advertising executions. And so as that demand starts to wane, I think we're going to be very curious to see what, if any, effect that has on data usage. But the flip side of that is that we strongly believe that in an environment where viewing habits are changing dramatically, that if there was ever a time where you would want access to granular viewing data across a large footprint of TVs, now's the time. And so we've been putting out a number of reports into the marketplace that actually started with, it was sort of just purely coincidental. We were in the middle of a project around March Madness and basically generating a rating using Inscape data for the purposes of the tournament. And we'd already done the analysis from last year's March Madness viewing, and we were about to pivot and dig into this year's tournament, and the tournament got canceled. And so, a fair amount of effort had already been put into the 2019 analysis. And so we were like, okay, so what can we do with this? And, my premise was, well, hold on. It's, I think we all know that the primary content genre that continues to prop up pay television subscriptions is live sports. And we just entered a world without live sports. So where'd everybody go? What are they watching now? And so I'm happy to share this report with you. We distributed this particular report about a month ago. The obvious change was that those sports viewers were watching news, but I think that can be said for a lot of different content genres and the migration of eyeballs. I think news has picked up dramatically just because people want to stay informed about what's going on with COVID-19. It was some of the secondary channels that I thought were interesting. One of which was like Discovery Family. So here's a heavy sports viewing household that now is viewing Discovery Family. So I think that's interesting, right? Because that means whoever that sports viewer was is probably now at home with their family and their kids, and there's a real good chance lost control of the remote on Saturday afternoon, right? And so now instead of ESPN or the NBA, that house is watching Discovery Family. And so, if you're in the TV advertising sales business and you're trying to figure out where your audiences have gone because you need to be able to tell your advertisers where that current migration is happening and how to reach certain eyeballs, now's the time to have access to that data. But I also think that's in direct conflict with the fact that it is, we're in the midst of what amounts to a crisis. And when you've got companies like Disney that are announcing a 90% drop in their earnings, you've got companies out there that are just in keep your head down survival mode. I think you probably
But
saw
didn't they have a big rollout of a film that was very successful, an animated film?
Yeah, they did. And look, that's one of the other things that we expect to change in the marketplace, because I don't know, it's the uncertainty around that is driven by the lack of consistency in terms of a plan. And I don't want to get into a commentary on
It's
on
kind
the
of like
politics.
everybody's well, that's another whole discussion.
Right.
Believe me.
Well, that's
I can discuss that. I'm into politics, but I know that everybody's KPIs, right, have changed. They're all changed completely.
yes.
What to do? How do you reset them? I don't know.
There's no doubt, but I also think that in the interest of trying to maintain at least some level of meaningful KPIs, particularly around revenue, the whole concept. So look, nobody's going to sit in a movie theater with anybody else in the foreseeable future. They're just not.
Did you see that Amazon might be purchasing AMC though? Isn't that interesting?
I saw that. I think it's interesting, but I think there's a short list of things that, whether some of these states reopen or don't reopen, just common sense is going to dictate that you're just not going to go back to what was considered normal. And that includes sitting in stadiums or in arenas for sporting events with thousands of other people in close proximity. And that includes going to movie theaters. So I think that what you saw with Trolls 2, I think you're going to see that proliferate. And I think that smart TVs are going to become a greater source of distribution for theatrical titles. And I think that's going to happen well into 2021. And so I think, in addition to viewing behavior and viewing migration changing dramatically, I think you're going to see the ways in which content distributors find and reach those audiences are going to become more innovative, and are going to also change dramatically. I mean, we were having a conversation about this a few weeks ago internally. You were already seeing a migration to more over-the-top consumption of content. So if you put that migration, which was, I think, going to take time, largely because how you find your content is habitual. And so I think for a lot of people, cutting the cord and then finding their content in a non-linear way was going to require education and the reformation of some habits. I think now that is going to accelerate dramatically, because if you think about the fact that not only are there not going to be any upfronts, but the fact that a big chunk of what gets presented during the upfronts is new content and the new slates for the fall. And now those slates are in question because production is shut down. At some point, people are going to run out of things to watch on linear TV. So now you're going to have to self-teach, you're going to have to accelerate your adoption and sort of self-teaching of finding content in other ways. Whether that's, whether you're a Samsung TV owner and you do it through TV Plus, whether you're a VIZIO television owner and you do it through Watch Free or other apps. I think as people start to, frankly, run out of fresh things to watch, they're going to have to teach themselves to go find content from other sources and other ways. And I think that a smart TV is going to be a massive driver of that shift in behavior.
Are you seeing the rise in specific platforms? I know everyone's saying that AVOD is seeing an accelerated use.
Yep.
But what about YouTube? What about, some of the other apps that are on there, some of the more buried apps, that have content that they might not have reached out for in the past, like, those apps that are buried in a smart TV, not the top level ones. Are you seeing any kind of shift, like you're saying, like navigating to other sources?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, actually, I'm sitting here looking at some key points from a a report that we generated, and I can send you a copy of this. On the SmartCast platform on VIZIO TVs, the use of ad-supported apps and streaming services was up 88% versus the pre-stay-at-home edicts around the country. So you're seeing an absolute explosion in the use of ad-supported apps on VIZIO smart TVs.
It's too bad you can't watch people unsubscribe from their services to see which ones they're unsubscribing from. That's what we need to know. Are people unsubscribing from Netflix? I know they're signing up for the free version. So,
look, I don't have any visibility into that, but I also I think that's all additive. Because I think part of what's driving that is just an increase in actual content consumption overall. I don't think it's an either or proposition. I don't think that the increase in the usage of AVOD services is coming at the cannibalization of the usage of services like Netflix. I think it's additive. I think people are spending more time in front of their TVs because you've got more, depending on the size of the household, you've got more people in a household that are using the TV. I mean, look, TV sales are very robust right now, because I think you've got a large sector of the economy that has basically said, if I'm going to be stuck in my house for a long period of time, then I'm going to do everything I can to make that experience as comfortable as possible. And entertainment, and particularly the ability, frankly, to watch things. I mean, we're binging The Mandalorian right now, and we were watching it last night, and just the ability to turn off work and watch something like The Mandalorian for a couple of hours and just kind of almost put your brain in hibernation in terms of what you're doing all day, every day from a work perspective. I mean, the idea of entertainment as escapism has always sort of been prevalent, right? I think the current concept of entertainment as escapism is even more important now than it's ever been.
Well, it's your window to the world. It's your campfire. It's your mental medicine.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. Like I said, we were talking about headaches earlier. It helps me when I have a headache. There's something about it. It just resets you.
Yeah.
We love TV. TV. But I am curious if...
It's funny, when we go watch TV now, and I'm not sure we used to say this before, but my wife will go, let's go shut down. And the point is, let's go sit in front of the TV and veg out and not have to think about either work or anything that's going on with COVID and the world.
My dad used to come home from work, and he's an attorney, and he would come home and he would have to just watch TV for an hour or two, and we weren't allowed to hang out, because he needed to shut down.
Yeah.
And now, I didn't understand it then, but now I do.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's like a de-stressing mechanism. But back to the shop for a second.
Yeah.
I wanted to definitely talk about the new deals that you have with OAR, with not the new deal, but the new members, Viacom, CBS, and Scripps.
Mm-hmm.
I know we could just talk about whether people are watching YouTube and what they're doing, and believe me, I'd love to do that too. But we also need to find out a little bit about that, because reaching audiences through addressable advertising is potentially going to be a lifesaver.
Agreed.
And
I mean, this gets back to the comment that I made about the need for granular data being more important now than ever. I think the ability to make your media more efficient and more effective using tools like addressable and targeting is going to be critical. Again, it gets back to where has the audience gone in a world that does not include live sports, and in a world where viewing migration is happening at an unprecedented rate. And how do you target those viewers with the right message? And so I think that I think the adoption of addressable stands to accelerate considerably. I mean, we're even seeing it with OAR. You know, I think one of the things that has always been very satisfying about managing the OAR project has been the fact that the members continue to lean in on a regular basis. I mean, I've said this several times publicly. You know, look, this amounts to, you know, sort of what is not part of necessarily everybody's day job. And so everybody continues to put in time and effort and energy into participating in OAR, which we think is fantastic. And, you know, I've said before, I keep expecting to send out an invitation for an OAR meeting and literally get crickets in return. And instead, I mean, we had a virtual OAR steering committee 2 weeks ago, and a happy hour, and 28 people participated from across all of our network members. It was great. And we're about to, you know, we've started the firmware rollout to the footprint of VIZIO TVs, and we're about to go into a beta period. And we've got 6 or 7 members that are leaning in hard in terms of participating in test campaigns here in the next month or so. And that picked up, I mean, everybody was interested, but now the sense of urgency around, I mean, I was on the phone this morning with a member who frankly had been, I don't want to say, you know, they were
Reticent
not reticent, just it wasn't, I wouldn't
priority?
call it a priority. And it was sort of, you know, we'll get to it. And on the call this morning, I said, so what are you guys thinking now in terms of participating in the beta? And they were like, oh, we want to do this now. We absolutely need to do this now.
I feel like everything is being accelerated. Previous low-level priorities have been moved to the top.
Yep.
I just wish that, back to the discussion briefly, and then we'll return to this, about what people are watching and how to direct people to new sources of content. I wish all of these broadcast networks and the smart TV platforms would accelerate interactivity, because that is going to make you know, metadata more valuable,
Mm-hmm.
more services you could subscribe to, more ways to interact with your favorite content.
Mm-hmm.
For example, my daughter is sitting upstairs, you know, before her school starts, we give her a little relaxation time because she's got, you know, Google Classroom all day, watching Hunger Games or something. You know, she's watched it several times, but and we're like, why do you want to keep watching that? But the point is that even for myself, if I want to go back to a content, there's no way for me to re-engage with it in a new way. I think there are more opportunities for that. I would love it if VIZIO accelerated that kind of thing. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit off the original topic, but I'm just introducing that to you. I know that the last announcement about OAR, other than the Viacom CBS Scripps announcement, was that there's technical integration testing going on with Freewheel, Xandr, and Google Ad Manager and NVIDIA. Have you added any more partners for that?
We haven't in that regard, largely because those are the primary platform providers for our members. And so, you know, between Freewheel, Xandr, and Google, you pretty much have the decisioning engine for every single member in the group.
And
so
that's still ongoing?
That's covered. Yeah. Well, it's, you know, now that we've started the firmware push, we released the decisioning spec, which was agreed to by Freewheel, Xandr, and Google. And so when we, you know, in terms of the betas that will roll out here in the next few weeks, all 3 of them will be involved. And that's just dependent on, you know, obviously, Xandr has their relationship with Warner Media, Freewheel has their relationship with NBC, Google has their relationship with Disney. And so you can just look at their respective client rosters in terms of who they provide those services to and set that against the OAR membership. And you would know, well, okay, if these companies are participating in the beta from an inventory perspective, then obviously these decisioning platforms will also be involved. So yeah, that work is,
Well, I think, yeah, that'll be very important.
It's almost done.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see the results of that, because that'll help generate, I think, the revenue that these companies need to keep pushing
Well, I mean,
forward.
look, if you look at what Linda Yaccarino said, was that yesterday? I lose track of time every week, about improving the overall experience, and that part of that improvement is reducing the ad load. Well, okay, so you need to do that in such a way that you're not that you're sacrificing as little revenue as possible to the improvement in that entertainment experience. And so the way to do that is to make that inventory more targetable, because that increases the value of the inventory. So it becomes a quality over quantity play. And we think addressable is a terrific tool in that regard.
How, what are you guys doing to understand, though, to go back to the original the first conversation we were having, so that when people are not watching sports and they're navigating to children's content, we don't know whether or not those are families sitting there or kids. They don't necessarily have a special profile that they've checked into.
Yeah.
You don't know whether the TV's just been left on. I mean, can you watch whether or not they're clicking through to other services in between shows to see what kinds of other content they're looking in, or is that too small?
So on the SmartCast side of the platform, they have that information. We actually keep a somewhat strict barrier between specifically VIZIO registration data and the Inscape data. Because we view the registration data as PII. So we won't let the Inscape side of the house touch it. We do have some visibility into behavior around the viewer journey across apps and across various parts of the platform. To your point about who's in the household, I mean, we've always said that there's no such thing as a perfect data set, and one of the gaps in the Inscape data set is that we don't have person level data; it's household level data. But that's where our partners come in, because given the fact that we license a data feed that includes an IP address as a match key off of our opted-in footprint, then you can, as an example, match that against Experian data, and that's at least going to give you a more granular view into the socioeconomic makeup of the household. So
Right.
we keep our own standing map report with Experian that gives us a sense of how, what if any skews that we have from an economics perspective, an education perspective, a home ownership perspective. We feel like, based on our own Experian reports, that we're about as close to census as it gets.
Who is watching then? What can you see? I mean, what kinds of socioeconomic groups are watching more TV, watching less TV? Is that something you can talk about?
So it's not something I'm going to be able to pull off the top of my head. I could, hold on, let me go into that report that I had opened up for the purpose of this conversation and see. It wasn't about.
I know in the recent piece about Telemundo, that mostly people in the Southwest were watching more television.
Yeah, so
and things like that. But,
I mean, those are the kinds of things, like geographically, and then in terms of actual viewer behavior. What we didn't do, but we could, it's a fair question, would be to match that up with Experian and take a deeper dive in terms of those types of attributes from a viewing perspective. What we primarily had done with these last two reports is figured out, okay, who's watching more apps, who's watching more linear TV, who's watching less linear TV, heavy watchers of, let's say, American Idol are also watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy, et cetera, et cetera. And so, NBA fans are now watching shows like Love and Hip Hop, ABC News. NCAA fans are now watching CBS Weekend News, 60 Minutes, Face the Nation, CBS This Morning. So it's been more, the trends that we've been generating with these reports are really more about heavy watchers of this particular program or these types of programs are now watching these types of programs or these particular programs. But that would be something interesting that we could do, is take that deeper dive in terms of the
That'd be interesting
demographics of those viewers.
We'd be happy to showcase it here.
Yeah.
When you're ready.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Jodie. As always, I really love hanging out with you. And I'm so glad you could be here.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation.
And I'm so glad that you guys are okay out there in Philadelphia.
Give my best to Richard.
I will. And to your wife, who obviously did that beautiful painting, as you said, behind you. I think she needs to put her stuff on art.net or Artsy. She needs to get an agent.
Not a bad idea.
Another revenue source. All right, thank you so much. Jodie McAfee from Inscape.
All right.
Take care.
We'll talk to you soon.